Hey, what's up guys? Justin at Empire Music and EmpireMusic.com in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Taking a look at a new series from Fender just coming out here at the beginning of 2025. This is the new Standard Series. And in the case of this video, I'm showing off the Standard Series Stratocaster. So Standard Series coming in just under the Player Series with Fender. So it kind of sits between what would be a Squier Classic vibe and a Fender Player Series. These are made overseas in Indonesia. A lot of cool features to talk about. Before I get into it, let me remind you, all the guitars in this video and everything we sell are available at EmpireMusic.com, where we list them with individual photos by serial number, and most importantly, full factory setup before we ship these guitars out. So we dial these things in. Our service team went over these guitars before this video. They feel awesome, and I'll speak to the playability and the build quality as we roll along here. So let's get into it. The Fender Standard Series. There used to be a Standard Series way back when I started selling guitars, maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, which was eventually replaced. There was the American Standard and the Standard. Standard at that time was a made in Mexico product. Eventually, as the price has crept up on that guitar has turned into the Player and now the Player II. The new Standard, made overseas in an Indonesian factory. So these are made in the same factory as the Squier Classic vibes, but Fender has deemed them worthy of the Fender brand on the headstock. And we'll talk about why that is. You know, when Fender started the production on these guitars, it was important to them to get the build quality as close to the Mexican build quality that you would get on a Player II. And after playing this guitar, they nailed that. And our service team kind of gave me the same feedback. These feel and play very similar to a Player II. Now we'll talk about some other appointments on this guitar that are very different from a Player II. But Fender has a dedicated line in their factory overseas to build these guitars. So they don't come off the same line as the Squier Classic vibe. That's going to be a comparison that everyone's going to make right out of the gate. Is this a Squier with a Fender headstock on it, or a Fender brand on the headstock? And ultimately that's up for you to decide, but I will speak to my experience playing these guitars, and the build quality, setup, and the feel is very reminiscent of a Player II. That said, we have some other features to talk about that will differentiate this guitar. So what do we have? We have a poplar body underneath the paint here, so whereas a Player II is going to be an alder body. We have different fretboard materials. That might be one of the biggest differences. So the maple neck, obviously the same as what you would find in a Player II. But we also have Indian laurel is the dark wood that Fender is using on this line. So different than rosewood, obviously. So that's one distinction there. The pickups, the sound of the guitar, that's going to be another distinction. Ceramic pickups on the Standard Series Strat, whereas a Player II is going to be an Alnico 2 pickup. What does that mean? Is it Alnico 2 or 5? It'll lose me right now. Either way, it's an Alnico pickup. The Player II is a little more, you could argue it's a more refined sound, more vintage leaning sound. The ceramic pickups, after playing this guitar for a little bit, are great. When you compare them side by side with the Player II, you'll notice a lot more output out of these ceramic pickups on the Standard Series. Interestingly, when you hook this up to a multimeter, these pickups will come in at around, come out with a reading of about 5 or so, whereas Player II, you're in the 7s, 8s on the bridge. Comparing them side by side though, much stronger magnets on a ceramic pickup. So a lot more output on these guitars, which is interesting. I'd say more mid-range, definitely more aggressive. So that's a big distinction there. And then a few other things. 21 frets on these guitars, kind of the classic Fender recipe, versus 22 on the Player II. But all the appointments on this guitar, I gotta say, the guitar feels really good. Really substantial bridge here with block saddles instead of the bent steel. So that's they have a satin look. They look really premium, and honestly they feel good. Medium jumbo frets, 9.5-inch radius, sealed tuners on the top. And what else is there to say? You know, everything you would expect. 5-way switch, volume, tone for the neck in the middle pickup, and a tone for the bridge pickup. So that is it. And what I would say about this guitar, is this guitar the right guitar for you? Well, up until recently, with Fender, there was nowhere to walk a customer from a classic vibe until you get to a player. And that's a big jump. A classic vibe comes in at about $450 or so. A player 2 is start at $800, and there's nothing in between there. So this guitar, again, Fender branded, so you get the value of a Fender branded product. And you're able to kind of, if you're not quite ready to spend the money on a Player 2 series, but you want something with the Fender name, and you want something that that really feels like a traditional Strat without leaning into the a classic vibe. They're inspired by a 50s, 60s, or 70s build. These are a little bit more just contemporary Stratocaster. So great for a player who likes to mod instruments. Perfect for a player that wants to mod instruments. These are a great platform to do that. If you don't like the sound of the pickups, obviously that's something you can change. And you can mess around with these last night in the store. You can really, by EQing your amp, you can get a ceramic pickup to sound really sweet. Not quite doing what the Alnico pickup does, but you can take off some of the the aggressive mid-range just by EQing your amp or gain pedals, whatever you have. So, but let's get into it. We'll give you some clean tones here and some overdriven tones, and we'll recap. right, so the Fender Standard Series Stratocaster, decent playing experience, very similar to a Player II from a playing standpoint and a setup standpoint. One thing I failed to mention at the beginning of the video, obviously we have new colors in this series. So this is the Candy Cola. Also have the Aquamarine Metallic, which is the blue here, represented in the HSS model. Olympic White, three-tone sunburst, so classic colors, some new variations of some classic colors. Playing-wise, again, similar to what you would expect out of a Fender instrument, hence the Fender name on the headstock. Sonically, ceramic pickups, more aggressive output, something you can lean into, drive your pedals or your amp a little bit harder with these pickups. I tried to demonstrate how rolling off the volume with the overdrive, these pickups are somewhat responsive, probably not as responsive as an Alnico 2, but they are responsive enough that you can work the volume with your overdrive pedals fairly well. So good guitar for someone looking for an Fender instrument they can grow with over time. Great guitar for something that you'd want to get and potentially grow with by modding it. So decent overall value in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments, as I'm sure you will. And go to the website if you have more questions about these guitars. They're all listed by serial number. We have a chat feature on the website, and always willing to talk to you over the phone about these guitars. So thanks for watching.